There's a disturbing trend gaining traction in many independent spiritual circles. The widespread use of pseudo spiritual jargon that sounds lofty, prophetic, and revelatory, but in truth is unanchored from the faith once for all delivered to the saints. A new lexicon has emerged, one filled with borrowed phrases, fashionable cliches, and quasi mystical abstractions, but largely void of doctrinal substance, historical rootedness, or sacramental meaning. We're witnessing the development of a language without lineage, a spirituality that's untethered from the cross, and often allergic to theological accountability. The result is a growing subculture of spiritual expression that, while sounding impressive to the untrained ear, is incoherent to the grammar of the gospel and often incompatible with the historic confession of the church. Terms like divine strategies, prophetic portals, various ways of using the word activation, kingdom codes, dimensions abound. Yet these are often uttered without any reference to the crucified and risen Christ, without continuity within the apostolic tradition, and without anchoring in the covenantal narrative of Scripture. They float, spiritually suggestive, emotionally evocative, and entirely unmoored. And in the process, the language of the saints, the language shaped by Scripture, forged through persecution, sustained by liturgy, purified by the creeds, and handed down through sacrament and suffering, has become a foreign tongue in many charismatic and independent spaces. Worse, those who still speak it are often derided as too religious, too theological, too boxed in by tradition, or not open to the Spirit. But this is not a tension between the Spirit and the Word. This is a crisis of formation and a failure to recognize that the Spirit of truth will never lead us into language that severs us from the very faith He Himself authored and preserves. The Church has always confessed a faith that is received, not invented, a faith that is handed down, not conjured up, a faith whose meaning is not determined by what trends, but by what endures. When the language of the cross, the resurrection, the ascension, the sacraments, the Trinity, and the communion of the saints is displaced by trendy verbiage and superficial novelty, what we're left with is not revelation, but religious simulation. We do not need more atmospheres of spiritual hype. We need language that crucifies the ego and conforms us to Christ. There's a difference between spiritual expression and ecclesial formation. There's a difference between sounding deep and being rooted. There's a difference between charisma and character, between momentum and maturity. The church is not sustained by sound bites, but by sacraments, not by hashtags, but by a holy tradition. Let me be clear, I'm not against creativity, new language, or fresh articulation of the mysteries of God. But I am sounding the alarm when language becomes divorced from theology, when spiritual speech becomes disconnected from Scripture, and when the word becomes so stylized, it ceases to be the word at all. We're not formed by what's catchy. We're formed by what's true. We're not healed by hype. We're healed by holy things. We're not sanctified by trend. We're sanctified by truth and grace. This moment calls for a return to the ancient tongue, not as archaic dogma, but as a living language, a language of covenant and crucifixion, a language of Eucharist and resurrection, a language that has shaped martyrs, mystics, prophets, and pastors for over 2 millennia. To those who still speak that language, keep speaking. You may feel like a foreigner in your own house, but you are guarding something sacred. And those who've abandoned it or never learned it, there's still time to recover the grammar of the saints. The church needs prophets, yes, but it also needs interpreters, those who can translate holy things with reverence, not reinvent them with recklessness. The future of the church does not belong to those who shout the loudest. It belongs to those who remember the story, speak the word rightly, and tend to the fire faithfully.